All right, so for this game, we have what is essentially just a grouping game. It's a bit of a rougher grouping game for sure, but in terms of the basic setup, it's really just that. We have just 3 zones, zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3, nothing too exciting. And we have a bunch of subzones that we're effectively going to be putting into those zones. Now, this one's a bit of a point of ambiguity that people can kind of struggle with, but as far as, we have what is essentially our subzones, and we have apparently usages for those subzones. But really, they're the same thing. They're treated as identical concepts. A subzone is simply defined by its usage. So really, we have 3 types of things. We have H, I, and R, and these are just the types of subzones that we can have. And subzones that we can have, or we're just going to put them into these zones. Now, they also put in a restriction in the original setup, which can be a little bit ambiguous too. They tell us that by city regulation, a total of no more than 3 subzones can be designated for each of the 3 uses. Now, you'll notice this restriction is not a limitation on how many things can go per zone. In fact, they don't actually mention the zones themselves in that restriction. Rather, we can have no more than 3 subzones for a given usage, H, I, and R, in total. Essentially, what this is basically saying, this is a very roundabout way of saying, that we can only have a maximum of 3 of these each. So we can have 3 H's, 3 I's, 3 R's at the most. That's a maximum number. In fact, on that note, you'll notice that they never actually give us a minimum. We don't actually have to have anything at all whatsoever as of right now. But on the upper end, we can only have a maximum of 3 H's, 3 I's, 3 R's. So effectively, we can have at most 9 elements on the board. So from there, let's take a look at the rules. So the first rule tells us that R's cannot go into 1. So R cannot go in 1. We can leave a little reminder here that we can't have any R's there. Next, no more than 2 subzones for housing are allowed in any given zone. Now, there's a couple of ways we can handle this rule in terms of symbolizing it, but in a lot of cases, seemingly more complicated rules can be simplified by simply thinking about what you're not allowed to do. And according to this rule, what are we not allowed to do? Well, we just can't have all 3 H's in a singular zone. No more than 2 for this game just means not 3. So we can kind of symbolize this as saying that you can't have 3 H's together. Next, no more than 1 retail is allowed in any subzone that has housing. And again, this one's a little bit easier to kind of make sense of if you just think about what you're not allowed to do. And what we're not allowed to do is that we're not allowed to have more than 1, or in other words, 2 R's with an H. So we can do something like H with 2 R's is not allowed. Now, for the record, you could have done this as a conditional statement as well, something like if you have an H, then I guess maximum of 1 R. But chances are this is a little bit easier to handle. Next, last rule, I's are not allowed anywhere we have H's or 3 R's. So again, let's just think about what we're not allowed to do. We can't have I's with any H's. So I, H can't be together. And we can't have I's with triple R's. So we just can't have I, R, R, R. In fact, you'll notice that all of these rules, they're very similar in the sense that they put limitations on certain combinations that can't really exist. But one thing that's kind of worth keeping in mind for this entire game is that there are literally no minimums whatsoever as far as any of the restrictions are concerned. Every single restriction that we have is an upper end restriction. It's certain that they restrict things that can't be put together, but we don't actually have to have anything at all. From there, I suppose let's take a look at the questions. So question number 18. So what could be a functional setup? As usual, we do these by the original rules. So first rule says that we can't have R's in zone 1. So A looks okay, B looks okay, C does not. We seem to have retail in Z1, so that's out. Answer choice D looks fine, and E looks fine too. Next, we can't have triple H's anywhere. So answer choice A does not. Answer choice B doesn't seem to either. Answer choice D, oh, there it is. 3 H's, can't do that. And E does not seem to have 3 H's together. Next, we can't have H with 2 R's. Let's take a look. Answer choice A. We have H with 2 R's. That is not cool. We can get rid of A. Answer choice B, we have H with only 1 R, so that's fine. And E looks okay as well, H with just 1 R. Next, we can't have I's and H's together, so let's take a look. B, do we have, oh, we do. Zone 1 has H and I, that's not okay. And answer choice E doesn't, so naturally we're good. The best answer to question number 18 is E. And as usual, I suppose it's not a bad idea to just plug that into the board. So answer choice E gives us 1 I in 1. Zone 2 gets 2 H's and an R. And zone 3 gets I with 2 R's. All right, so from there, I suppose let's take a look at the local questions. So the first local question that we get looks to be number 21. Let's see what we can do. If 3 subzones are designated for each use. So essentially, if we're going to have 3 of, well, everything. So I suppose the question becomes, what does that do for us? Well, we're going to have, well, I suppose we're going to have R's on the board, and they're not going to go into 1, so they'll just go into 2 or 3. So I guess that's something. Actually, wait a minute. We also know that I's and H's are not going to play nice, and we're going to have 3 of each, so they're obviously going to go into separate zones. Oh, but wait a minute. The H's themselves, so the H's also can't all be together. So wait a minute, let's talk about the H's. If we can't have all 3 H's together, and for this question, we're gonna have 3 of them, that means that we're gonna have to separate the H's between at least 2 different zones. But none of those H's can be with the I's, which means that essentially the H's are gonna have to be split between exactly 2 zones so that we can accommodate all of the I's to go into the 3rd zone. Now, we don't exactly know which zone is which, but let's just kind of do this off board. What's going to end up happening right now is we're going to have effectively 2 of our zones are going to harbor H's, and the 3rd of our zones is going to have all of the I's together because they can't go with any of the H's. So we kind of have a baseline template for what could happen between the zones. In fact, wait a minute. We know that the H's, they can't have 2 R's together, right? And we have to have 3 R's, which means that no matter what we do, even if we give the H's as many R's as possible, only one of the R's can go here, only one of the R's can go there, so at least one of the R's is going to have to buddy up with the I's. Oh, we can go the other way too, because the I's can't have all of the R's together, so at least one of the R's is going to have to buddy up with the H's. And from there, the 3rd R, I guess it could go either with this H. Oh, wait, no, it can't, because the R's, we can't have any R's in zone 1. So if we put an R with this H, we would have R's everywhere, and that's certainly not going to fly. So the 3rd R, it can't be with an H because we can't have 2 R's with H. So the 3rd R is actually also going to go with the I's. In fact, regarding zone 1, we can kind of say that it's going to have to be this guy right here who goes into zone 1 because these sets cannot. So we can say that zone 1 is going to have an H, and then these guys, I suppose, are going to just split between 2 and 3. So we can have an HR block split with triple I's and 2 R's. And that just leaves us with an extra H. And I suppose the extra H could either go with this guy or it could go with that HR block. So that's pretty good. Let's see what we can do. The question asks, what is allowed? Answer choice A. Exactly 1 subzone in 3 is going to be well, no, we can't have exactly 1 industrials. The industrials all have to be together right now. Answer choice B. Exactly 2 in 2 are housing. And I suppose, yeah, I mean, it doesn't say we don't have retail there, but we could have exactly 2 housings in number 2. They would just go with the R. So that actually seems viable. let's hold on to B. Answer choice C, 3 subzones in 1 are industrial. No, we can't have industrials in 1. 3 subzones in 2 are industrial. That's fine. And 1 is retail. No, because if we have the industrials, they're going to have to go with 2 retails. So that's out. E, 3 subzones in 3 are retail. No, we're going to have to divvy up the retails for this scenario. So the only viable answer here is answer choice B for question 21. Next local question is number 22. Let's take a look. If one subzone in each zone gets industrial, so if we have an I in every, so let me just clarify that this is separated. So if we have an I in every single subzone, so first of all, that means that we're done with the I's. There's no more I's since we're maxed out at 3. And moreover, there's also no H's in this scenario because I's and H's don't play nice. But we could still have R's, except for 1. In fact, this is done, right? There's nothing else that can go into zone number 1 since we've exhausted the I's. We can't have R's there, and we can't have H's there, but we could have some R's sprinkled between 2 and 3. So let's take a look. The question asks what is allowed. A, more subzones are retail in 2 than in 3. And yeah, that seems okay. You could just throw 1 retail in here and 0 retails here, and that would qualify. So that seems viable. Let's hold on to A. B, a subzone in one of the zones gets housing. No, we can't have any housing right now. C, exactly 2 subzones are in 1. No, we're stuck with just that one I. Next, exactly 3 subzones each are in 2 and 3. And no, because if we wanted to get up to 3 subzones in each of these 2, we would have to have 2 R's in addition here and then 2 R's here, but that would be 4 R's total. We don't have the R's to spare. So that's not going to work. Answer choice E, exactly 4 subzones are in 3. And no, that would require 3 R's over here, and we can't have an I with 3 R's. So once again, the best answer to question 22 is A. Next, number 23. If 3 subzones in all are designated for retail and 2 gets housing. So first of all, we have a housing in 2, and moreover, we're going to have 3 retails. So first of all, if we have to have 3 retails, we know that they're not going to go into 1, but we're only going to be able to squeeze 1 of them with H because H can't go with 2 R's. So at least 2 of the R's are going to have to go into zone 3. Now we could have all 3 R's there as well. That would be okay. Or the third R can go with the H over here. That would be okay as well. So I guess we're a little flexible. Let's see what we can do. The question asks what is allowed. Answer choice A, 2 subzones in 1 are housing. And yeah, that seems pretty safe, doesn't it? Because, I mean, as long as we don't have all 3 H's together, which we don't, and you're going to have 2 of them here, that seems viable. Just in case, let's take a look at the rest. Answer choice B. Could we have more industrial in 2 than in 3? Well, no, because we can't have any industrials here. I and H don't play nice, so that's out. C, more retail in 2 than in 3. And no, we've already got 3 retails in 3, and we certainly don't have 3 retails to put into 2, so that's not going to fly. Answer choice D, the same number of retails in 2 and in 3. And again, no, because we've already got 2 here, we can't put 2 there. We're maxed out at 3. Answer choice E, a subzone in 3 gets housing, and oh no, I suppose that can't happen because H can't be with 2 R's, so there's no housing in zone 3 right now. So best answer is A for question 23. Next, I guess back to numbers 19 and 20. Let's take a look. Number 19, what cannot happen in a single zone? Answer choice A, 2 subzones, 1 H, 1 R, and that looks okay, doesn't it? Remember that this game doesn't have any minimums. So yeah, it doesn't really break any of these possibilities. So yeah, why couldn't you have just an H and an R together? I mean, you can't have H with 2 R's, but you could seemingly have H with 1. Answer choice B, could we have 2 subzones, 1 I, 1 R? And again, we can't have I with 3 R's, but why couldn't we have just 1 of each? Answer choice C, 3 subzones, all of them retail. And yeah, again, why not? We talked about how we could have maybe even done that over here. And yeah, nothing stops you from having all 3 retails together. Now, for the record, that would mean that 3 retails can't be with H and it can't be with I, but you could just have 3 retails by themselves. Answer choice D, 4 subzones, none of them industrial. So if we have 4 subzones with 0 industrial, what would we have then? I guess you would have, well, actually, no, I don't think that could happen, could it? Because you can't have all 3 H's together. And if you have even 2 R's, you can't have any H's either. So there's no combination of 4 that you could have without industrial, because you would either have 2 H's and then you're limited to just 1 R, or you have 3 R's and there's no H's. Yeah, this actually looks like it cannot be true. Let's hold on to answer choice D. Just in case, answer choice E, 4 subzones, 2 retail, 2 industrial. And yeah, this doesn't seem to break anything. 2 R's, 2 I's. As long as we don't have 3 R's with an I, we're still good. So best answer to question number 19 is D. Next, number 20. What's the max number of subzones we can have in 3? Now, we can use our history here. We know that we've seen as many as 5 subzones in 3. So that would pretty much push us up to D and E. A, B, and C are already out. So the question is, we know that we can do 5. The question is, could we swing 6? Now, I suppose if we wanted to do 6, I's and H's are never going to be functional. So it's either going to be I's with R's, or it's going to be H's with R's. Except I's with R's are never going to get you up to 6 because you can't have all 3 R's there, right? 5 would be the most we can do between I's and R's. But as far as H's and R's are concerned, that's not even going to come close either. In fact, we kind of talked about it a moment ago. If we have H's and R's, you could have at most 2 H's, that's because you can't have all 3, and at most 1 R because you can't have 2 R's with an H. So that would only push you up to 3. It's not even close to 6. So it seems like 5 is the maximum. Best answer to question number 20 is D.